Hi there, my name is Dr. Marissa May. In this video, we'll be solving some trig equations. Let's start with the one on the left here first, but before we jump in, I want to pay attention to the directions. Your directions tell you a lot of information. So for instance, these directions tell us that we have to answer in radians. So it would be inappropriate to say the answer is 30 degrees. Okay. These directions also tell us that we are only going to consider one revolution around the unit circle. Because think about it, we could go around the unit circle as many times as we want, but for these answers, we only want one time around. So we'll keep that in mind as we answer. Let's begin on the left here. I need to get this trig function by itself. So I began with some simple algebra. I just add the 3 and then I'll divide the 4. So I've got cosine squared equals 3/4. Now I'm going to take the square root. When I do that, I want you to be really careful because when you take the square root, you have to consider the answer could be positive or it could be negative. So I've got the square root of 3/4, or the cosine could be the the negative square root of 3/4. Okay. Now you're probably thinking, I know the square root of 4. And you're right. I do too. And we want to use it. So I'm going to rewrite this as cosine is square root of 3/2. Or cosine is negative square root of 3 over positive 2. So let's think about what quadrants my cosine would be positive in. So my cosine is positive in quadrant 1 and 4. And cosine then would be negative in quadrant 2 and 3. So I'm going to do the 1 and 1 because it's super easy. Because everything is like positive and 1, all of that. So here's my triangle in quadrant 1. I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So I'm going to label the adjacent side square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is 2, which means the other side is 1. So if my vertical side is 1, that means my reference angle is 30 degrees. And you may be saying, but we can't answer in degrees. And you're right. However, I think in degrees, which is why I do it in degrees first. Because then I can easily just transfer. This angle is it is 30 degrees, but in radians, that would be pi over 6. Just side note, if you need to make that conversion, remember you're multiplying by pi over 180. So when I go to quadrant 4, I need to think about, okay, what angle in quadrant 4 has a 30-degree reference angle? So if you want to draw it, I'll do a little sketch here. If you draw it here in a 30-degree reference angle, then I want you to think you would go 330, right? And then you can convert 330 to radians, which would be 11 pi over 6. To do the negative square root of 3/2, you're going to work in quadrants 2 and 3. So again, you're asking yourself, what angle in quadrant 2 has a reference angle of 30 degrees? So if you draw that, here's your triangle and your reference angle is 30 degrees. Well, that means you have to do 180 minus 30 degrees, which would be 150. And if you convert 150 to radians, you get 5 pi over 6. If you do the same thing in quadrant 3, you get 7 pi over 6. Okay, so those are your 4 answers here for this equation. Now, let's take a look at the equation on the right. I'm going to do it very similar. So the one on the right here, I'm going to do it similar, but I'm going to factor first, right? Because I didn't just have the squared term, but I had this sign also that let me know I probably should factor. And so this side of the equation actually factors to sine of theta plus 1 squared. So if I take the square root of both sides, which is pretty nice because the square root of 0 is just 0, you don't have to consider positive, negative. You can see that I get that the sign is -1. Now, something to consider is that we know sine is 1, -1, or 0 only at the axis on our unit circle. So I want you to think about, okay, sine is y over r equals -1. Now, sorry about my video. Not sure why it's doing that. That's okay. We'll work through it. Remember, in your unit circle, the radius is always 1. So you're really looking for where is this y value -1. The y value is -1 at the bottom of the unit circle here. And that angle would be 270 degrees. But in radians, that's got to be 3 pi over 2. And again, sorry about my video. Not sure why it's doing that. But that would be my only solution, because it's the only place that y equals -1 there. I hope this helps.